And if I were Hillary Clinton, I'd be careful too, because she may go to prison. I don't know. I don't know if she will. Look, lock her up was a chant, but boy, today you feel like, at least in your mind, you're certainly going lock her up. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Chuck Grassley's report is out. The annex, the John Durham annex, has been declassified, and there's an email basically from one of the top campaign people saying HRC says go with this nonsense that Russia hacked the emails, our emails, and Russia's colluding with the Trump campaign. This is all to distract from Hillary Clinton's emails. The George Soros Open Secrets Foundation was involved with this. The Democratic Party, the FBI, the CIA, the Obama administration. I mean, everybody was involved in this Russia collusion hoax. And Hillary Clinton was colluding with Russia. And there's no doubt about the fact that for years, when she was whining to anyone who would listen that she lost because of Russia, this was not only used to distract during the campaign, to try to make people think Trump would be some sort of a Russian puppet, to try to discredit his presidency, to try to bring down his presidency, and then for her to use it as an excuse as to why she lost, as she, I guess, maybe thought she could run again in 2020. I don't know, but wouldn't shut up about it, blaming the Russians. And now it's all out. It's all coming out that there's no doubt she was behind it herself. And these idiots put this stuff in writing. I don't really get that. I don't completely understand the whole thing about why they put all this stuff in writing, but nevertheless they do. And we've got a lot of audio for you today. Chuck Grassley was on America's Newsroom. Caroline Levitt, she updated people about it at the White House press briefing, which I watched a short time ago. So all that's happening, and we're getting like 7 inches of rain, and we have radioactive wasps. Yes, it's true. Wasps. I don't know, maybe locusts too. I don't know. It could be the end of the world. I don't know. But wasps at a nuclear site, and now they're radioactive. So we'll talk about that as well. But the documents prove that Hillary Clinton okayed the plan to smear Trump with Russia collusion. HRC. Those are her initials. Hillary Rodham Clinton. And that's who was in charge, and that's who signed off on this. Signed off on a plan hatched by a top campaign advisor to smear then candidate Donald Trump with false claims of Russian collusion and to distract from her own mounting email scandal during the 2016 campaign. That's everything that's coming out right now. And these files have all been declassified today. All right, so people are going through them. The intelligence came from 2 memos obtained by the Obama administration in the lead up to Election Day that laid out confidential conversations between leaders of the Democratic National Committee, including then chair and Twisted Sister frontman, cover band frontman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and liberal billionaire George Soros and his Open Society foundations. The plot, the brainchild of the Clinton campaign's then foreign policy advisor Julianne Smith, included raising the theme of Putin's support for Trump and subsequently steering public opinion toward the notion that it needs to equate the Russian leader's political influence campaign with actual hacking of election infrastructure. Julianne Smith would go on to serve as former President Joe Biden's ambassador to NATO. She had no comment when the New York Post reached out to her today. Neither did the Open Society senior vice president Leonard Bernardo, who was looped in on the scheme and laid out its intended effects in a series of emails in late July of 2016. Julie says it will be a long-term affair to demonize Putin and Trump. Now, it is good for a post-convention bounce. Later, the FBI will put more oil into the fire. 2 days later, he wrote, HRC approved Julia's idea about Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections. That should distract people from her own missing email, especially if the affair goes to the Olympic level. Now, that is an apparent reference to a massive state-sponsored doping campaign by Russia following the 2014 Winter Games. The point is making the Russia play a U.S. domestic issue. In absence of direct evidence, CrowdStrike and Threat Connect will supply the media, and GRU, which is Russia's foreign intelligence arm, will hopefully carry on to give more facts. Now, this was evidence that Special Counsel John Durham uncovered during his probe into the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Crossfire Hurricane was the name that Comey and the other scoundrels gave it to investigate Trump's fake, alleged, fugazi ties to Russia. Durham consulted the FBI and the CIA, both of which assessed that the information was likely authentic, but couldn't corroborate exact copies of the Bernardo emails with Open Society Foundations. That's Soros. The CIA also determined that the intelligence was not the product of Russian fabrications. The CIA. Let me say that point again, because this is the point that needs to be emphasized. The CIA determined that the intelligence was not the product of Russian fabrications. Julianne Smith was, at minimum, playing a role in the Clinton campaign's efforts to tie Trump to Russia. That was the conclusion reached by Special Counsel John Durham. The Trump-Russia investigation was part of what a March 2016 memo included in the annex described as, quote, a two-pronged DP opposition. Now, that could have a number of meanings. So, Democrat Party is what the DP, two-pronged DP Democrat Party opposition that is focused on discrediting Trump, among other things. The Clinton staff, with support from special services, is preparing scandalous revelations of business relations between Trump and the Russian mafia. Special services, cited in one of the memos, referred to the intelligence activities of Obama's CIA and FBI, which may have included the work of Trump dossier author Christopher Steele. Basically, what this means is that the Hillary Clinton campaign and the FBI and the CIA and the Obama White House were all in on this together. They were all in on it to try to stop Trump from becoming president, to help Hillary Clinton get elected president. This is why, for years, I have been saying we have a police state in this country, because as I've told you many times in my introduction to political science classes at the University of Maryland, I learned very early on that a police state is not cops on horseback. It's not tear gas. It's not even a cop beating a guy with a phone book to leave no marks. Those are tactics. A police state is when the government uses its law enforcement and national security apparatus to conduct political activities, spy on its citizens, go after its political enemies, and try to help its political friends and allies win. That's exactly what we had here. It's why I've been saying America is a police state, or was. We're exposing all of it now. And thank God Trump won. But you see also why they tried to push him out, why they did push him out in 2020. Let's not forget something, too. Christopher Wray would eventually become FBI director. And Christopher Wray, in the lead up to the 2020 election, would be out there telling people that the Russians were still at it. Now, this is important to note, because when Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger came out with the Twitter files, they revealed that in the summer of 2020, the FBI went to Twitter and Facebook too, and said to them, something big is coming, we believe, from Russia. Okay? And they were telling everybody that Russia wants to hack our election. They want to get involved in our election and to be on watch for it. Now, Chris Wray, as FBI director, is a slimeball weasel, deep state weasel. He had the Hunter Biden laptop. As FBI director, the FBI had the laptop in their possession. They knew it was not Russian disinformation. they knew it was real. If you remember, they were spying on Rudy Giuliani in the summer, or I should say summer through fall of 2020. They would not prosecute Giuliani. They would not charge him, but they were spying on him. They were listening to, they were building a case against him that went nowhere. Rudy Giuliani was speaking with Miranda Devine of the New York Post. Miranda Devine would be the one who would ultimately write the story about the Hunter Biden laptop. So the FBI knew the story was coming. The FBI went to Twitter, went to Facebook, and said, it's coming. Right? The Russians are coming, basically. So when the story broke in the New York Post and the 51 former national security deep state hacks, people like Comey and Brennan, Clapper, wrote that letter and said this has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. The FBI at no point came out and said, no, this is not Russian disinformation. Christopher Wray never held a press conference. He never told anybody. They let everybody believe it was Russian disinformation. What would happen? Well, as you know, Twitter, Facebook, social media, corporate media, they would all block the story. You couldn't share the story. You couldn't talk about the story. You couldn't comment on it. Twitter forbade you from sharing the story because it said it violated its policy on hacking. So the New York Post story, written by Miranda Devine in 2020, you could not share that because it violated their policy on quote-unquote hacking. The New York Times wouldn't cover it. NPR refused to cover it. All the corporate media, with the exception of Fox News and the New York Post, and then everybody else said, Russian disinformation, we're not giving the story any credibility. Okay? Let's back up. Before Chris Wray becomes FBI director, James Comey's FBI director. James Comey knows that this is all a fugazi. The CIA knows this is all a fugazi. The White House knows this is all a fugazi. But they let the Hillary Clinton campaign go forward with it for months, and at no point do they ever step in and say, this is all a bunch of BS. In fact, not only do they not say it's a bunch of BS, they help make it seem real and credible by having investigations and briefings and everything else that they could do to make everybody believe Russia was actively trying to interfere in our election, thus giving credence to Hillary Clinton campaign's argument that they were doing that at the behest of and for the benefit of Donald Trump because Putin wanted him to win. These are very bad people here. These are very bad people. They had a political problem. And the problem was Hillary Clinton's email server. As Secretary of State, she was engaging in emails that were not classified. She was violating protocol. She broke the law. To get away from that, they changed the narrative. They changed the subject to make it about Russia. And they had the help of Barack Obama's CIA, Barack Obama's FBI, Barack Obama's NSA. They had the help of the corporate media. They had the help of social media. They had the help of all of these entities. It truly is a miracle that Donald Trump was able to prevail. But she also ran one of the worst campaigns ever and never went to the Rust Belt. And she's a hideous human being and people don't like her. But that was their whole plan, to get Americans to say Trump is a Russian asset. We can't elect this guy. Let's go back to the story here. The memos also claim that then President Barack Obama was putting pressure on FBI Director James Comey through Attorney General Loretta Lynch to wrap up the probe of Clinton's use of a private email server to receive highly classified information while Secretary of State. In a January 2016 memo, it said the following: Obama has no intention to darken the final part of his presidency and legacy by the scandal surrounding the main contender from the Democratic Party. The March 2016 memo read, has no intent, let me back up. The March 2016 memo claimed the 44th president had sanctioned the use of all administrative levers to remove possibly negative effects from the FBI investigation of cases related to the Clinton Foundation and the email correspondence in the State Department. In December of 2016, Obama ordered a post-election intelligence assessment of nefarious Russian activity surrounding that year's election. So let's understand why he did all the things he did. In the spring of 2016, they wanted the investigation into Hillary Clinton to go away. If you remember, Bill Clinton would meet with Loretta Lynch to talk about their grandkids. They wanted the investigation of Hillary Clinton to go away. When she lost in December of 2016, Barack Obama says, I want an assessment on the whole Russia collusion. And then in 2017, they go forward with this idea that Donald Trump was elected because of Russian interference. Because now that he won, they figured, well, now we got to bring this guy down. Our efforts to stop him were unsuccessful. So now we got to bring him down by making everybody convinced that he only won because of Russia. And think of the actors who were involved in this. Peter Strzok, Peter Strozak, Lisa Page, going back and forth. We will stop him. We won't let him win, but he did win. So then Barack Obama and the CIA and the FBI and all these other people, they then had to try to convince the American people, and most importantly, the Republican Party, that you now had a Russian asset in the White House, so that the Republican Party would remove him from office, impeach him, remove him, whatever. That was what their goal was. And they would continue that for years. They would cost the American taxpayers $60 million plus. They would try to drive his presidency to a screeching halt. They would scream Russian interference every chance they could. And then in the lead up to the 2020 election, they would do it all over again. Only this time they were successful and they were able to remove Donald Trump from the presidency. In a rigged election, because they lied about the Hunter Biden laptop and let everybody believe that it was Russian disinformation, so that they can continue the narrative that Joe Biden was just a kind old man hiding in his basement, keeping you safe from mean tweets and COVID, and not the scumbag SOB, mean and corrupt old bastard that he was and is. But that was their plan, and it worked. They were successful. 2020 election was rigged because of that. Period. There are, I believe, millions of Americans who would have changed their vote had they known the extent of Joe Biden's corruption. So you don't even have to talk about voting machines, and you don't even have to talk about dead people voting. You don't even have to talk about the Pennsylvania Supreme Court changing the rules to allow ballots to come in that had no postmarks on them 3 days after the deadline. I mean, all those things helped, but the laptop alone, that alone was enough to bring down Donald Trump's presidency. And that was orchestrated by our government with full knowledge that that laptop was real. And yet they let everybody believe that it was Russian disinformation. Okay. There's a lot to this now, and stuff that's breaking as people are going through this. The assessment that the Obama administration ordered in January of 2017 included, over the objection of senior CIA officials, details from the Christopher Steele dossier, an opposition research project funded in part by Clinton's campaign and the Democrat National Committee. In March of 2016, then FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, scumbag, shared the memos with senior officials at the Department of Justice, suggesting a plot to launch an investigation based on the Democratic campaign document. Quote, during the first stage of the campaign, due to lack of direct evidence, it was decided to disseminate the necessary information through the FBI-affiliated technical structures, in particular the CrowdStrike and Threat Connect companies, from where the information would then be disseminated through leading U.S. publications. Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, and other members of the U.S. intelligence community declassified the Durham Annex at the request of Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa. Based on the Durham Annex, Grassley said, the Obama FBI failed to adequately review and investigate intelligence reports showing the Clinton campaign may have been ginning up the fake Trump-Russia narrative for Clinton's political gain, which was ultimately done through the Steele dossier and other means. These intelligence reports and related records, whether true or false, were buried for years. History will show that the Obama and Biden administration's law enforcement and intelligence agencies were weaponized against President Trump. The political weaponization has caused critical damage to our institutions and is one of the biggest political scandals and cover-ups in American history. I'm sorry, but I disagree with the senator. It is the biggest political scandal and cover-up in American history. Name me a bigger one. Name me a bigger scandal than the FBI and the CIA and the White House working with a political campaign to try to get the Democrat elected. Name me a bigger political scandal. What? Burglars breaking into a hotel office complex in D.C.? Seriously? The FBI, the CIA, the White House spying on a presidential campaign, lying about a U.S. citizen running for president, lying to FISA judges, omitting information to FISA judges, discrediting a U.S. citizen running for president, orchestrating their own little operation to try to get their party's candidate elected president. I'm sorry. There's not even a political scandal in American history that even comes close to that. There's not even one in political history that even is in the same room as that. The close second is the laptop. But this is the biggest political scandal in American history. Number 3, of course, is Biden's pudding brain and the people around him making everybody believe that he was capable of being president. But even that gets dwarfed by all this, in my opinion. Because Biden was still alive, as far as we know. You know what I mean? He was still living, breathing. So CIA Director John Ratcliffe said in a statement that the files, some of which came from the CIA, showed a coordinated plan to prevent and destroy Donald Trump's presidency. And there's a lot more to this. But here's what Pam Bondi said in response to the documents coming out today. This Department of Justice, alongside the CIA, is committed to truth and transparency and will continue to support good faith efforts by Congress to hold our government accountable. Chairman Grassley is leading by example, shining light on critical issues of great interest to the American people. The American people deserve the full, unfiltered truth about the Russia collusion hoax and the political abuse of our justice system that it exposed. Today's declassification and release of documents tied to the Durham report is another step toward that accountability. I'm grateful to Chairman Grassley for his steadfast leadership on this issue, and I look forward to our continued partnership in exposing one of the most shameful frauds ever perpetrated on the American public. The Post reached out to representatives for Clinton and the Open Society Foundation for comment. They did not get any. If they do, we'll certainly bring that to you as the show goes on. We have a lot to talk about today. We're just getting started here. That is the big story of the day, brought to you by Dr. Mike Veneria, Veneria Dental. Go see him today for your perfect smile. VANARIA, VeneriaDental.com.